What's up, everybody? This is Alex Christoforou with the Duran, and I'm here with Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran, and today we're going to be taking a look at the EU alliance forming between Italy and Hungary. All right, Alexander, it seems that we have a counterweight to the German hegemony in the European Union, to Angela Merkel and Germany's power within the EU. And it seems to be forming between Viktor Orban and Salvini of Italy. And the two leaders met, and it looks like they're forming a united front to go against the Brussels and the German dictate as to how the European Union should be run. Fiscally, as far as immigration goes, in many aspects that run contrary to the beliefs of Orban and Salvini. What's your take on this alliance? It's not a formal alliance yet, but it definitely seems that this is becoming a united front.
I think it is immensely important news. Now, can I just say something about this? I mean, you said it's not a formal alliance. Of course, you cannot actually have a formal alliance within the EU. That would be impossible. But it is a real alliance. Salvini and Orban are people who, and the governments they lead, are people who have very similar views. And the important thing to say is that this isn't just an alliance between two people with similar views, but Italy is, of course, one of the big giants of the EU. I mean, it's one of the big countries in the EU, and it's got one of the second biggest industrial base within the EU. So Italy is a big country. It's not a small country like so many of the other countries are. So already that makes it a strong counterweight. But more important of all, Salvini and Orban have the popular tide riding behind them. They are winning the elections. Salvini is now far and away the most popular politician in Italy. He is gaining in strength there all the time. Orban dominates Hungary politically. More and more countries are looking towards him. And of course, if we're looking further afield, in Germany now, we've had people like Seehofer, the Bavarian interior minister. He's talking about the fact that he would have been on the side of the protesters in Chemnitz, this East German city, where there were the anti-immigrant protests following the stabbing of a German man. So you see, even in Germany, with the rise of the AfD, the momentum is behind Salvini and Orban, and it is ebbing away for Merkel and Macron and the EU establishment, with Merkel and Macron's popularity falling continuously.
Right. And I imagine that the EU, that Brussels and Merkel will not go quietly in the night, obviously. What do you think their reaction is going to be to this counterbalance of what has been up to date pretty much a unilateral power within the European Union? You mentioned Chemnitz. We also have the Swedish elections,
Absolutely.
Which will most likely see, I think, the Sweden Democrats end up in second or third place, a very, very strong second or third position, which is very historic.
Absolutely.
What do you think Merkel, Macron, Juncker, and all of these neoliberals are going to do to counteract the momentum?
They are in a bind because they don't really know what to do. And I think that's become extremely clear over the last year and a half. Their big hope was Macron. Macron won the election in France through extremely extraordinary manipulation of the political system in France and of the use of corruption and scandals to discredit politicians that stood in his way. But since he's become president, it's become absolutely clear that he doesn't have any real way forward to pursue this policy of Europeanism and of integration that he wants, and that it's losing him support in France as he tries it. And of course, we've seen Merkel's own position dwindling. What I think they're going to try to do in the short term is I think they're going to do all the various things that they've been trying to do up to now, but even more so. I think they're going to accuse their opponents of racism and of xenophobia and of nationalism and of being populists. I've never understood, by the way, what being a populist means, especially in a democracy, but never mind. So they're going to mobilize the media, which supports them, to do that even more. They're going to use the bureaucracies, especially the Brussels bureaucracy, to try to punish countries that stand in their way. They're going to try to use the European Central Bank to try and put a real stranglehold on Italy, which is, of course, as I said, a country with many financial problems. So I think they're going to try and use all of these methods to try to sort of hold the flood tide back. But I don't think it's working. And I think the more they try to use these devices or these methods, I think the stronger the current against them is going to grow. That is my view.
Usually when you have one or two countries or two entities in a group rebel against the powerful, others join on board. Usually it takes one to break the pattern, and then everyone comes on board. What other countries do you see or do you foresee possibly shifting towards support for Italy and Hungary and the policies that they're projecting for the EU?
Well, I think Austria already is actually fully a part of that camp. I think the other Visegrad states, Slovakia and the Czech Republic, are pretty much on the brink of going that way also. The Poland is a curious mixture, because on the one hand, it agrees with Orban and Salvini on nearly all things. The Polish government agrees with them on nearly all things. It's also a very right-wing government. It doesn't agree with Salvini and Orban on Russia, and in Poland that is a big issue. So maybe the Poles will be a little bit nervous about going down that particular road. But nonetheless, I can see a steady, movement in Central Europe, especially, beginning to gather force. Now, Italy, of course, could act as a magnet for the other South European states. And, of course, Spain, the political situation in Spain is becoming extremely unstable. The situation in Greece, as we know, is very unstable. But I think the other country, which is the one that you mentioned, is, of course, Sweden. And I think we can also see back before long possibly a right-wing alignment with Sweden also. And that will be a historic change, because Sweden has always been at the forefront of liberal social democracy. So if that goes into reverse in Sweden, that will send an enormous signal right across Europe.
You mentioned Russia. What does this mean for Russia, this fragmentation, this very obvious and clear fragmentation in the European Union?
Well, the Russians have an economic interest in a stable European Union, but they also have a political interest in a European Union that is friendly to themselves. Under the Merkel-Brussels compact that there's been, the directorate, if you like, that's been running the EU, they haven't seen very much that is politically favourable to themselves. If that changes, and Salvini and Orban are friends of Russia, both of them outspokenly so, then of course the Russians can only welcome that development. It would be remarkable were it otherwise. But can I stress and reiterate and re-emphasize, the Russians are not causing this realignment. This realignment is happening because of events within Europe and because of the dead end that the Merkel, Macron, previously Hollande axis has driven Europe into. It is a reaction to its policies. It is not part of some master plan devised in Moscow.
Yeah, it was Merkel that opened the doors and the floodgates to millions of migrants. She welcomed them in, and it was the endless wars.
Absolutely. And of course, that crystallized
Yeah.
concerns that many people in Europe have been having a long time, because of course they've been seeing a European Union that has been increasingly attacking their identities in all kinds of ways. It's been attacking their national identities. It's been pursuing policies which are now becoming enshrined not just in EU law, but in the EU treaties, on all sorts of issues, controversial issues, issues which conservative people might find difficult, on gender politics, on all sorts of things, which I think it's a step too far, because people said, look, we were joining the EU because we saw it as a association of democracies which would work together on certain things and which would work together on economic matters to a certain extent. We didn't expect it to become the kind of system that it is becoming, where these ideas, these concepts are being enforced upon us without us having any say in them. And that is creating a reaction, and it's creating a reaction right across Europe. And of course, Salvini and Orban are now crystallizing it politically, but it is gaining major traction in Germany itself, Germany being the heart of the EU, and of course it's already had a lot of traction in France.
Right, and Sweden as well.
And Sweden as well. Sweden as well.
Let's end this segment with, we talked about Russia. Does Trump care about what's going on? Does he like to see this Make Europe Great Again movement with Salvini and Orban, or is he ambivalent to the whole thing? Does he have enough problems?
Well, he has lots
already?
of problems, but I mean, he's made it absolutely clear that he doesn't like Angela Merkel, and that he is politically strongly aligned with Orban and Salvini and with Kaczynski in Poland. In other words, with the leaders of this radical realignment. And I think he will welcome it. And by the way, I think Donald Trump is following all of this very closely indeed, because though most of his problems originate in the United States, we should not underestimate the role that Europeans have played in stirring them up. And the Europeans who have stirred them up are not Salvini and Orban, who are Trump's friends. They are Trump's enemies in Europe, of whom there are many.
Yeah, the neoliberals,
exactly.
elitist
Exactly. Who, of course, dominate the media here and are very entrenched in the bureaucracies and, of course, in the intelligence services, as we should never forget.
Yes, indeed. Alexander Mercouris, thank you very much for taking a look at Italy and Hungary and the alliance that they are forming within the European Union. Guys, if you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below and click on that notifications bell to get notifications every time we push out a new video. And visit the Duran shop, pick up a t-shirt, help support the Duran. Also, feel free to donate to our site via PayPal. The links are down below in the description for our PayPal as well as for the Duran shop. Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran, thank you very much. Until next time, take care.